going to work. Okay, yeah. So maybe we can start with just if you don't mind, if you can introduce a bit about yourself. I saw your bio that you graduated from university in Tehran and
Yeah,
with like bachelor's in piano and master's in composition, right?
yeah,
So yeah, maybe a bit on how you came to be studying in the US and what's your experience been like so far? Yeah.
yeah. Um, I came to the United States in September 2021, and I came to pursue my doctoral studies, and I'm in my fourth year. I'm a PhD candidate in music composition at UCSC,
Mm,
University of California, Santa Cruz.
I see. Okay. Yeah. And so this is your fourth year. Is it a 5-year program over there
Fourth
or?
year. The program is 5 year. I'm now working on my dissertation.
Okay. It's like almost at the end.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, because I'm only in my first year of doctorate. So
You are also a DMA student?
yeah, yeah, but I just started. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, maybe going into a little bit about the piece, I came across the piece because I saw that recording of Thomas Giles on
Yeah.
YouTube. Yeah, and I know, yeah, he's an amazing saxophonist, but I was just very interested because you had that description of the piece in the YouTube. And maybe we can start with you talking a bit about the title, because is it pronounced Baadbaan? Or
Baadbaan. Yeah.
yeah, and I saw, in Persian it kind of translates to sail, and it's very
Yeah.
interesting when you mentioned like it's associated with sort of resilience and resistance. And I was wondering like what's the importance of this word, in Persian culture, and how much of that is sort of translated into the piece for you.
Yeah. Actually, in Farsi or Persian language, um, Persian is a poetic language. So many words in Persian carry, poetic meanings. And yeah, for example, dandelion is qasadak in Farsi, and qasadak means the little messenger. And
Oh,
we say, for example, when they blew a dandelion and
yeah,
those small parts of that go somewhere,
yeah.
it carries a message. So there are a lot of vocabularies that carry poetic meaning.
Mm,
So, and also I like Baadbaan, which is, the pronunciation is also poetic. And I was, imagining the Baadbaan, in a sea and,
hmm.
going back and, just created a story in my mind. And
Yeah.
so for all of my pieces, I have a story behind that. So I don't want to express that explicitly. I usually have them for me to create my musical forms.
Mm,
But yeah, this is why I call this piece Baadbaan.
I see. And is that word, sort of like, does it come up in a lot in Persian poetry or things like that? Has the meaning sort of changed and is it like used
Mm,
in different social contexts now? Or
Poetry, to be honest, I don't remember any poem using Baadbaan at the moment. I don't have any
mm,
close to my mind, but uh, it can be, in some stories or as I said that many words in Farsi carry poetic uh, mm, qualities.
mm, yeah. Yeah, nice. I sort of, it's interesting that you said like the pronunciation of the word was something that like caught your attention. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, was that like reflected in the piece or like how did you like think about that?
actually bod is a word that is has been used in a lot of poems, especially modern poems. So bod is also for example, like Furu Farrokhzad that says bad ما را خواهد برد, wind will carry us, because bad means wind.
Mm,
And this word has been used, extensively in, Persian poetry.
mm,
But, in general, bad bone and the word uh, suffix "ban" also is used in Farsi. It is a little difficult for me to explain that because
Yeah.
you should know a little about Farsi, so I try to just simplify that.
Mm-hmm.
So it in general, sometimes I'm taking the words and yeah, I think about the meaning of the words, but sometimes I don't think of that, and I just take the word as a, you know, uh, beautiful, vocal expression. I don't know what to call it, but
Yeah.
for example, in my recent work, I'm using some of Hafez verses in one of my music, but I'm just decomposing the poem
Mm.
and into different syllable and just uh, trying to create rhythm with that. So this my relationship with words and decomposing the words and getting a certain sense of a certain word is something which you know I've been using in my works a lot,
Mm.
but it's sometimes not easy to explain that because it's something intuitive and yeah, but I love working with words without paying attention to the meaning because the meaning that we gave to these words through thousands of years, as human being and working with vocabulary, we
Mm-hmm.
gave these meanings to these words. But
Mm.
sometimes they are beautiful when we call them, for example, like certain names, like people's name. Maybe we don't think about it. We just feel, okay, it sounds great to,
Yeah.
So this is also another aspect that I paid attention while using this name for my piece.
I see. Okay. What's the title of the piece that you were talking about with the decomposing of the sounds of the poem?
This is Dormant Embers, but it's an album that I'm working on.
I
So
see.
it's an album for a string quartet and Persian instruments, and I want the performers to also do some, using repeated words and syllables
Yeah.
together while performing. So this is the work that three pieces that I'm working on. I'm gonna, publish them in an album. It's an ongoing project.
Wow, okay. I'll be excited to listen to it. Yeah, when
Thank
it's
you.
out. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think I have some questions about specifically the music score later on that I think relates
Mm-hmm.
to a lot about what you said. But yeah, before that, I think I wanted to ask, when I first heard the recording of the piece, because I'm not very familiar with music from the region of Iran, and but I
Mm-hmm.
could recognize that there was like some sounds from like the Southwest Asian region. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's sort of for me like I wasn't sure like how to approach it and what kind of influences you were using and maybe like some of the
Mm-hmm.
nuances of the piece. So if you can talk a bit about yeah, those Iranian influences that maybe inspired you, and also a bit about like what was your concept of the piece? Like, was it a reimagination of like Iranian music, or was it trying to fuse it with sort of contemporary saxophone
Yeah.
techniques? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, there are some certain Persian music aesthetics that I use in my works usually. Uh, Let me start from the mode that in this piece is written in. Uh, there is a certain mode in Persian music. The modal system of Persian music is called Dastgah system.
Mm.
So Chargah is one of the Dastgahs. This piece is written in Chargah, and there are two accidentals, important accidentals that represents quarter tones in
Mm.
Persian music, Sori and Koron. So this piece is written in Chargah G with E chord, which its key signature is E and A chord and F sharp,
Mm.
and Chargah in D. The piece ends in Chargah in D, which is um, uh, B chord, E chord, and F sharp and C sharp. But
Mm.
I didn't use the chord notes that much. I used them instead with flat because, for example, E chord is one quarter tone higher than E flat.
Mhm.
But sometimes with some melodic figures and some bending, as you see, for example, I have my E flat in the piece a lot of times, which is a little slightly bent up.
Mm,
So it's somehow I didn't want to use that E flat, that explicitly. I wanted to somehow distort the quality of that with putting some bendings and some other techniques and some air notes, slaps, and some other things to somehow not have that e-coron because I wasn't sure I wrote this piece as a piece for an Opel call for scores, and I sent it to Thomas, so I wasn't sure that the performer is familiar with these quarter tones in
yeah.
Persian music. That's why I was a little careful, and I wanted to just add some certain techniques and just try to create a sense of charga. It's not a good source for, learning charga because
Mm,
charga is a, very traditional style. And
mm,
I'm just inspired by certain techniques, certain, aesthetics of that.
yeah.
So, and for example, another quality that Persian music has, it has a kind of improvisational quality. When
Mm,
there's a solo piece for a solo instrument, there are usually improvisation in that. So I try to keep my piece doesn't have any bar line, so I try to keep the
mhm,
piece in a kind of improvisational way which shifts seamlessly from one phase to the next, and it's like kind of telling a story and uh, taking you from different phases as a listener
mhm,
to the end of that. So I try to keep this improvisational quality that like for example in an improvisation by a Persian instrumentalist, that it is somehow a certain knowledge of the performance that should know how to improvise. So they start from maybe a kind of light section and go to rhythmic ones, and so I try
mhm,
to somehow have that quality in this piece to make the listener feel as if it's happening right now, but at the same time, it is a super fixed composition. There's nothing, left for the performer to improvise on. Yeah, this is the idea of that. And the other thing, yeah, for example, there's this a certain rhythmic part, that part is
mm,
inspired by one of the pieces by Hossein Alizadeh. Hossein Alizadeh is one of the greatest Iranian composer, and
I
who
see.
wrote several books on, for tar and setar, which are some Persian instruments. And I took some, figures, melodic figures of that piece, and changed that and developed that and used that. But in Persian music, usually the phrases are symmetrical.
Mm,
So my music is asymmetrical, and I didn't want to.
mhm,
The original piece is the bar is septuple meter. So I try to have that quality of septuple meter a little bit, but
mm,
my music doesn't have any bar and a certain meter.
yeah.
So these are some of the techniques that I used in this piece.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I had one question about sort of the improvisatory nature, because I mean, even of course without the bar lines, there's a certain sense of freedom, but even I think even with the bar lines, the way that you wrote like some of the decorations of the notes, it sort of brings out that improvisatory quality. And as like a person like approaching the piece from outside of that culture, it's useful, like you're giving the names of the people, like maybe I immerse myself, like I try to immerse myself in that music, like I would get more of that sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you mentioned the name Hossein. Could you repeat the last?
Hossein Alizadeh. I can type it here for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, he has a lot of great He has a lot of great tutorial books, and he recently published a series of books, I think in 7 volume for um, teaching Persian music theory,
Okay.
and they are wonderful.
Okay, well, yeah, I gotta ask, did you like grow up learning a Persian instrument or like how was that like
No, that is
surrounding?
actually the regret of my life. You
Oh,
know, it's like I started to take singing lessons,
mm,
but you know, that's I started to learn Persian music when I came to the United States because I used, you know, some melodic figures, and you know, I knew the theory, but I, you know, somehow enhanced my skills more when I came to the United States.
mm. Oh, yeah. When you said about singing, I think it's one of the questions I wanted to ask was about the vibrato. Because yeah, like the way you notate the vibrato, I notice, it's not, you're not just copying and pasting that
Yeah,
symbol. So like in my mind I was thinking, maybe this is kind of like how a singer would sing, but I wasn't sure of the reference. And then also like for you, how important is it to follow like that control that you want? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. For example, in Persian singing, when they sing, when the singer sings, for example, notes with long duration, like the, they don't, for example, in classical, Western classical music, they keep that clean and
Mm,
steady, but in Persian music, you should do the, or, you know, play with that. So
mm,
I really love this quality because they shift, you know, a little, maybe with bending up and down. So for having the nature of the singing, you should not sing super clear, but the
mm,
challenge is that you should know how to do this, you know, vibrato, how to do these bendings, how to do all of these things. So, because if you don't do that right, it doesn't sound well and it
yeah.
sounds like out of tune. So that's
Mm,
really challenging. And, you know, many times, you know, I'm trying to learn some certain aesthetics of each dasco. For example, on certain notes of a mode, they
mm,
do a bending up and come down. And it's like for them, for you know,
mm,
people who are you know expert in Persian music, it's
yeah.
like a piece of cake. They do that, you know, unconsciously.
Yeah.
But when I want to sing, and I usually think about it, and you know, it is actually a nice approach for me because I approached this music with another mindset. I,
Mm,
you know, was, you know, trained as a classical music uh, student, and you know, I don't have some of the ideas and some of the things that they do naturally. So I
mm,
have to study them. So it helps me a lot because I'm writing music for Western instruments, and it's really helpful for me to know how uh, to find ways to convey what I mean to the
yeah.
performer. So it is something that I'm experiencing. It is really subtle, and it's,
Mhm,
you know, it might not, you have to listen to that a lot to
mm.
recognize those things, but it's really beautiful and helpful when I use them in my music, and it gives that a certain nature and quality.
Yeah. Are there any like of your favorite singers or like people you were listening to that maybe subconsciously or consciously like translated to the type of style that like you were trying to write for?
You mean that a certain singer that I
Yeah, maybe
listen to?
certain singers or recordings or like yeah.
I listen to a lot of recordings because since you know since Persian music is based on improvisation, and some
Mm,
you know ornaments change from performer to performer and are based on the performer's interpretation.
mm,
So the composer, for example, to a certain song form in Persian music, which is called tasnif, the composer writes down the melody, but the
mm,
performer might change that a little bit according to their abilities and their
Mm,
interpretation of that music. So I have to listen to a lot of different singers because uh, their performance really are really different from each
mm,
other.
yeah. And for you mentioned that sort of using like different daska, people
Yeah,
do the vibrato slightly different. Like, were you?
not in different Dasko. Actually,
Ah,
Dasko is the model system of Persian music.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the Dasko is like the basic of the music theory.
Mm,
But in singing, for example, there are two main techniques which are called qalt and tahrir. Tahrir is like kind of um, melismatic phrases, like
I see.
doing on a certain uh,
Word,
on a
is it?
certain note, yeah.
Okay.
And qalt is like bending up and down or bending between notes. So
I see.
there are no, like in many tahrirs, there can be some accents like ha 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 like this, or but
Mm,
qalt can be like
mm,
for example, they want to say the they go slightly up and come
mm.
down. I'm not a good performer and good representative for that,
But
but I just try to,
but it's clear, yeah, sort of where
yeah.
the inspiration comes from. And I it's I know like how hard it can be because for saxophone, like contemporary techniques, it can sound a bit like, okay, it's this technique and this technique, but how do I combine them to like get this organic sound? And I think one of like my favorite sections was like the last part, um, with like the delicate melody and then like fading into the air sounds.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, was that sort of also like a very vocal kind of thing? And then with the sort of punctuated with like the slap tongue, right? Like what was that idea for you?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point that you mentioned. I usually have this, vocal idea, and I somehow hum the music that I create to see if it feels natural. Then I write it down for solo pieces that has that kind of improvisation, no, improvisational quality.
Yeah.
So yeah, for this I also somehow uh, sang that melody before writing that, and I wanted to have it fade away.
Mhm. Did you get to work with like a saxophonist when you were writing this piece, or was it kind of new?
No, no, it
Oh,
was my first time writing for saxophone. I
yeah,
read a lot. I watched a lot of. I usually, when I want to start to write for a piece, write for a certain instrument, I
yeah.
start to listen to a lot of pieces, and then I tr start to, collect these certain techniques that I like, watch tutorial videos, and write a book. I don't remember the book. Sorry, and but
Is
it
it
was
the
a kind of.
Wise and Nettie book, maybe? Like the contemporary techniques for
Yeah, something, it
maybe.
was something about, for saxophone. It
Yeah.
was really comprehensive and I learned a
Mm,
lot from it. So it's a kind of like going to a school and
yeah.
learning and then starting to write because it is really difficult
Yeah.
to, and saxophone is a quite complicated instrument. And
Mm,
I am really willing to discover something new in every piece of music that I write, even for a
mm-hmm.
violin, we heard, thousands of pieces for violin,
Yeah.
but I want to discover something new. So I have a kind of master class for myself before starting to write any piece of music.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the saxophone does have like I think a singing quality, which is, it translates really nicely. But what are some of the challenges that you found, with writing for saxophone that maybe you didn't
Yeah, for
expect?
example, some glissandi, I wasn't sure if they work,
Mm,
or for example, Bispiclando, I wanted to use that
yeah.
technique. I wasn't sure if it sounds the
Mm,
way that I want.
yeah.
So I watched a lot of tutorial videos on different techniques to make sure that they work, best.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, it's for the most part, I think everything was very clear, and it's nice to see that it translates well. I do, going back to what you said about the microtone. I get like how hard it is, especially with the whole multiphonic. You have that one part where it's like
Yeah,
the saxophone microtone and then transitioning into the multiphonic. And I know sometimes the books say one thing, but it's
yeah,
like
it doesn't
yeah,
sound
it's different.
yeah, actually I learned those, multiphonics from multiphonics charts. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I wanted to choose the uh, um, tonality for my piece, I was looking at this to see which one can work for my idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came up with this and I choose those one. And just a little bit, because for example, there are multiphonics that they have those quarter tones, naturally. So I just chose them because, as I said, I wasn't sure if the performer can understand this. And also, those macrotonals in Persian music, you have to listen to that music and get the culture of the melody and the
Mm-hmm.
figure. It's not easy to comprehend because sometimes it's not exactly one quarter tone above, for example, E flat. It
Mm-hmm.
might changes. It has you have to get familiar with the aesthetics. So I try to like find a way to write my melodic figures in a way that are understandable, and at the same time they somehow has the sense of that mode that I want to use. So it's a little bit difficult to keep the balance between them because I want to, you know, I love extended techniques. I love, contemporary music, and at the same time, I really love Persian music aesthetics, and I try to keep a balance between them to make that understandable for the performer, and at the same time, have something familiar with Persian music listeners.
Yeah. Is there any? This is a question just off the top of my head, but is there any sort of other notation ways that you're exploring now to, further like, um, yeah, try to combine the two because it's such a difficult thing to tell someone what you want when that person has no idea, of sort of like your reference and
Mhm.
yeah, and it's always hard, yeah, with notation, I think.
Yeah, to be honest, I try to keep things simple.
Mm,
Because, I'm not with my piece to explain everything. And sometimes when I even add some description and notes for the performer, they might not convey, 100% what I mean. So I try to make that simple and understandable and super conventional. I
mm,
use conventional style of notation. I don't use that much, contemporary because the nature of my music is not like that. And if I even if I want to have some improvisational parts in my piece, I wrote the figures down, and I maybe ask them to, based on this melodic figure, do your improvisation. So for those pieces, I might have some conversation with the performers, but I usually try to keep things clear and simple to understand. I don't know whether it was understandable and clear for you when you were studying the
it
score.
was.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I try to keep that clear for
Mm.
performer.
Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. Um, I think I just have a few questions, if that's okay, because I see that my non-upgraded Zoom is running out of
Oh,
uh, but I think just in general also, for you like as an artist in the US now, and I sort of come, I sort of say this as an international student myself also, but sometimes, when we are abroad, it sort of changes the relationship we have with our home country and we see things differently. Like how was writing this piece and like what did it mean for you like at that time? And even now, with your compositions, like um are there any sort of ideas that you're exploring that you realize like it's because of this where you are now, like away from your home and also like with experiencing like different things in the US.
yeah, it's really interesting that when I was in Iran, my main focus was on classical music. And when I'm here, it's as if I'm somehow trying to compensate my, nostalgic feeling for my homeland with
Yes,
just
that, yeah.
immersing myself in everything which is related to Iran.
Mm,
And I'm listening to Persian music every day. I'm writing, reading new things, and I'm
mhm,
writing about, what is related to Iran. And
mm,
it's really strange that this helped me to, you know, feel really better while I'm far from my home country because I'm on visa student and I'm not allowed to go out of the country. And
I
it's a
see.
little
Yeah.
difficult. Emotionally, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
But being involved in everything, which is related to Persian art, really
Uh-huh.
helped me too. And also, I feel that when you have something, you might not notice the value of that. Here, when I want to order a book from Iran, I'm like waiting the days to receive that book. But in Iran, I could go and buy whatever books I wanted. So
Yeah.
it's like I know the value, and every book that I have, from Iran, I keep them like a treasure, and I read
Oh, wow.
everything and listen to Persian music. And it's
Mhm.
really strange for me that, uh, yeah, I'm more in Iran than when I was, physically there. So I'm learning more and more and using, Persian music aesthetics in my work more than ever.
Yeah, yeah. I get that. I really do. Even though I go home every year because I'm like, I have to go home, and see my family. But it's sort of like if I were in Singapore, yeah, like you said, like I would be learning classical music, like that's what I'm doing. And then over here, it's different. The connection is different. Um, yeah, I think thank you so much. Like those questions were um I think it just helps me a lot as a starting point to just think about the piece. I performed it once already for my recital, but I'm
Oh,
trying to record
wonderful.
it again.
I
Yeah,
would be
I'm
happy
trying
to
to.
listen to that.
Thank you. I will send it to you once I record it again. 'Cause
Oh, great.
yeah, yeah, and I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, and
Thank
yeah,
you
get
so
to
much.
rest well. Yeah, and I'll keep
Thank
in touch.
you.
Yeah,
You
thank
too.
you.
Thank you so much. Keep in touch.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.